I'm Holly Schindler, an award-winning author as well as freelance editor, writing coach, and storytelling instructor. And today in our InDesign for Authors series, we're going to be looking at creating attractive chapter titles. Now, I'm just going to be building on my previous video that I did on creating section headings or subheaders. If you need a refresh on that, I'm going to link to it at the top of the screen. And this is my book on narrative transportation. That's my example text I'm using here just to let you know what you're looking at. Now, again, this is all about using paragraph styles. In my book on narrative transportation, I've got a couple of different things going on in every chapter. I've got a chapter number and an actual chapter title. Now, you may not have all of that, I realize, in a novel. You probably got one or the other, but I thought this would be especially helpful here because this book does have both. Okay, so to begin with, I'm going to create a new paragraph style for my chapter number. I'm going to come down in the paragraph style panel, select create new style, and I'm going to edit that style, right click on it to edit. I'm going to give it a name, chapter number. And remember, you can come over to the left side of your paragraph style options, head to basic character formats. You can choose the font. I'm going to use a font from my cover, probably make it bold, increase the size here. Indents and spacing. Now you do want to make sure you've got that alignment centered. Now in my previous video about doing subheaders or section headings, I encouraged you to include a space before and a space after in order to make sure that your white space would stay consistent throughout. But I'm going to show you this quirk that InDesign has when you're dealing with text at the top of a text frame. Okay, so if I set my text before to say 0.5 inch and I set my space after to the same, just for example here. Okay, now we can see what happened here. InDesign changed the font, the size, turned it bold, included the white space after, but did not include white space before. If you see that happen, you are not doing anything wrong. InDesign does not put white space before when it is at the top, when you've got text at the top of a text frame. And even though you have threaded your manuscript, we dealt with that in the very first episode of this series where we, threaded or made our text auto flow. Even though you're doing that, each one of these pages has its own text frame. So it doesn't matter that this is chapter 1. Chapter 2 is going to behave exactly the same way. InDesign will not put white space at the top of your text frame. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and I'm going to edit this again. And I am actually going to remove my space before and space after. I'm going to set them both to 0. And the reason I'm going to do that is when I come in here and I set a new paragraph style for my chapter title, go into basic character formats again. Choose my font, increase the size, make it bold, go to indents and spacing, make sure that it is in fact centered. Here, because the chapter title is not the first line on that text frame, I can include space before and space after here, and it does give me white space in between the title and the number, the chapter number, and again with the chapter title and the first paragraph of my book. Now at this point you're probably thinking this is great, but most chapter titles or numbers don't start at the top of the page. They start some lines down. Now as indie authors, this is going to be a case where it is probably just easiest to hit return about say 5 times, right? Now, for the most part, when you're formatting an ebook, the name of the game is to keep things as simple and as uncluttered as possible because you can't control what your reader is reading on, what device they're reading on, what they're going to do to the font. And there's very little you can do visually to an ebook before you start, absolutely mucking things up. But when you move into your print book, suddenly you have some different options available, right? And I think we all want to begin to explore doing some things visually that are cool to our books, okay? And one of the things, kind of the first thing that you will feel compelled to do, even if you are not an artist, you will feel compelled to make your chapter titles more than just text. And I totally get that. So I wanted to include some advice on how to incorporate something visual in your chapter title. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to include a frame around this chapter number. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to grab my rectangle frame tool from the left side, and I'm going to draw just a rectangle here. Okay, now I'm going to place an image within this image frame. I'm going to hit File, Place. Okay, now when this happened, it looks like there's absolutely nothing in this frame. Okay, I'm going to go over here to the Properties panel, and we can see over here we've got some options here for what we can do with our picture frame. Okay, and that is actually what this is. This blue bounded box is the picture frame. When you are dealing with images in InDesign, you actually have two things going on. You have the picture frame, and then you have the picture itself. You're actually going to have two boxes. If I grab my selection tool and actually click within here, you can see the selection tool changing, and it's telling me exactly that I have two things here. I have the frame and I have the object within the frame. So I can come down here and I have frame fitting options over here in the Properties panel. The most useful one to me is the fit content proportionally. So if I click that, now we can see my actual little doodad here, my frame that I picked to go around my chapter number. Okay, now I can show you again. It'll show a little clearer here. When I click, now you can see the actual image is selected. Click it again. That's my frame. Oops. The orange is the image. The blue is the frame. Okay. And we can align our frame. If you come over here to the align options, you can make sure it is aligned horizontally. Now, for the most part, what I have found to be the most useful when I include some sort of visual element with my chapter titles. Now, you may have something, I picked something, a frame here that goes around the title. You may have some pretty doodad that goes under the title, goes around the title. There's so many options here. It is limited by nothing other than your imagination, right? But when you are editing this manuscript, if you include extra text and this page moves, you come down a couple pages or so, you want this little doodad to move with this chapter number, right? You don't want them to get separated. So the easiest, quickest way I have found is to click the image frame, hold Shift. Now click the text frame. Okay, now both of these items are selected together. Right click, hit group. Now those two items, this text frame for this page and this image, are grouped together and they will always move together. So if I were to go to the page panel and I were to add another page right here, there you go. That image moved with this page. I think that's going to do it for chapter titles. If you guys have any questions at all about using InDesign, got a specific pain point, something that just gives you fits every single time you open InDesign, or if you ran through one of my previous tutorials and InDesign did not behave the way you expected it to, please do drop a question in the comments. I would love to, build a video around any question you have, or do kind of a troubleshooting video, just kind of answer questions that everyone has had along the way. Catch you in the next video, you guys. In the meantime, go write something.